Hello, everyone. Our question of the day is, or the question of the episode is, if we were in Disney World right now, right this very moment, what would you want to be doing?
Ooh, good question. It is approximately 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on recording day. We are mid-April, so it's starting to get a little bit warm. Never mind. I know exactly what I would want to be doing. I'd want to be sitting at Nomad Lounge waiting for a dinner reservation.
And where would we be having dinner? Tiffin's?
Yeah, that's fine. I don't even care what we're going to have for dinner. It could even be a walk-up. I just want to be sitting at Nomad Lounge after kind of a longish day, just chilling, relaxing. That stupid Will Smith song just started running through my head. Took everything in my power not to sing it. Or rap it, as the case may be.
Oh, dear.
Yeah.
Oh, so Friend Like Me or Prince Ali? Which one?
Yes, either one. So, yeah, that's where I would want to be right this very moment is Nomad Lounge with maybe even like the Snow Leopard cocktail.
Oh, okay.
Something along those lines.
Okay. I like it.
How about you?
I would have to say along those same lines. That's actually a really good idea, though.
Yeah, I was trying to talk myself into something else, and then that just popped into my head.
But I think I would almost rather be at one of the resort lounges.
Ooh, which one?
I'm thinking the outside of Trader Sam's.
Okay. Tell me why.
Because it's outside. And it's got a great view. And then there would be any number of things we could do for dinner.
Yep. Everything on the monorail is open to us at that point.
Correct.
Steakhouse 71 Lounge for a delicious hamburger.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So there it is.
It's a good call. Great question of the day.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Scott.
I'm Candice.
I'm Lacey.
And I'm Lariah.
Grab a drink and come hang with us at the Hangar Bar.
Okay, welcome back to Hanging at the Hangar Bar, everyone. Tonight you are graced with just Scott and Candice.
Here we are.
Here we are in all our glory. Wait.
No.
No. It's a good thing we're not a video podcast.
I was just thinking the same thing.
This is not an After Dark episode.
No, we are fully clothed.
Yes. Oh,
Thank the
goodness.
Lord.
Thank the Lord. For our neighbors, anyway.
True story. We don't need to go into all of that again. Let's go.
Okay, so this episode is going to be all about group planning. So Candice and I were talking a little bit, and we're like, heck, we should be talking about this into microphones instead of just in our basement while we're watching YouTube videos. But we thought one of the things we've not really talked a lot about, and we now have a little bit of experience with, is sort of planning and going on a group trip. Our last trip back in February was a group of 9 of us that all had very different ideas of what Disney should be.
Including some first-timers.
And some definite ideas as to what we wanted to do and when we wanted to do it. So we'll talk through that a little bit about our experience on going with a big group trip. And then Candice has also been working with me on planning kind of a potential group trip to Disneyland. So I want her to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the pitfalls that people may fall into, some of the complexities that you have to think about. And so we'll probably jump back and forth a little bit between planning and experience, but that's kind of the topic for today. We hope you enjoy. I think it's going to be a fun, interesting one that if you like to use our podcast for planning, this is just another in that series of things that you can use to maybe do that. Sound good, Candice?
Sounds great.
Okay. So where do we start? Do we start with kind of maybe going back and talking a little bit about our February trip?
Yeah, I think that would be a good place to start.
Okay. Shoot.
So...
Bang.
the first thing that we had to do when we were deciding on the February trip is gather the people that were going to go on the trip with us or who would be invited on the trip. Schedules are different for everybody, and everybody's schedules are crazy, it seems like. So finding a date range that worked for everybody was a bit of a challenge, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting your when do we go, and because for that trip we had a very specific reason why we were going.
Yes, we were celebrating a birthday.
One of our friends had a milestone birthday that we were celebrating a little bit late, but we wanted to go at the non-milestone birthday this year. So we knew kind of a date range of when we wanted to go, which was kind of late January, early February. We wanted to avoid crowds as much as we could. We didn't do the greatest job at that. We did okay.
I think we did about as good as we can, just
Right.
because like that particular time of year, they get a lot of school groups and that kind of thing in. So you kind of have to watch those schedules and go when you can,
Yep.
when there aren't all of those people there.
Yeah. And so once we kind of had our date picked out, we realized that the group of people that were going to be going, the people that were invited, we had ranging from anywhere from someone who had never been there before, who was saying, I'm just going with the flow, I'm doing whatever. When I say that, I'm saying, tell me where to be, when to be there.
Right.
Not like I'm just going to go in without a plan. It's some of you have done this a lot. I'm going to be following you. Is kind of, we had that extreme to one side. And then on the other extreme, we had podcasters about Disney, and we had someone who went with us that is a Disney pro. I would dare to say this person is a more frequent visitor to the parks than we are.
That, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know
Maybe.
all their past trips, but like would hold their own in Disney trivia, would hold their own in park trivia, and was doing this as kind of a solo trip where we were trying some different things like 4 parks in one day. So we had both extremes of people going.
You know, that still makes me just so tired even just thinking about
Right.
it.
Just thinking about doing that makes me want to curl up and take a nap at the Nomad Lounge. Sit in a comfortable seat and just watch them run by.
Okay, we'll be here. Bye.
Have fun. Okay, so that was kind of a challenge to deal with, right?
It was. Yes.
So how did we handle that?
So I think the thing that really may have made the difference for us in the success of this trip is that we kind of let everybody choose what their must-dos were. We provided as much information as possible as far as what's there in each of the different parks, and I lent out some of my Burn Bombs books and that kind of thing just so they could get an idea of what they're actually getting themselves into, because if you're going to Disney World particularly for the first time, be prepared to be completely overwhelmed from the time you arrive on property to the time you leave.
Yes. 100% agree. It's so much.
It is so much. It's so wonderful, but you have to know how to manage it, and you
Right.
have to know how to listen to yourself and don't overdo it.
Right.
And we got real close that first day in the parks. We got real close to that line.
Yeah, and that speaks to traveling with a group a little bit too, because I think if Candice and I had been going alone, we would have made a different decision for that first day.
I agree.
So which is fine. Like the people we went with are listeners. I don't want them to feel guilty about dragging us along.
Oh,
'cause
no.
We could have said no at any point
Right.
and said, no, we're just going to do our own thing and we'll meet you at the after hours event. But I think more talking, we're like, yeah, maybe we do want a park day, our first day there, and go into Epcot our first day. So like that's some of the nuances that you kind of have to deal with when you're dealing with a group is, okay, what's everybody's must-do list? Some folks build spreadsheets. Some of us know the parks well enough that we're just like, here's my must-do list. It's in my head. Everything else is gravy.
Right.
I'm not going to plan out to the nth degree every day. So sidetrack for just a minute. one of the things that I absolutely love about Disney is both of those extremes can have equally as good a time. Mm-hmm. Now, if you go in with absolutely zero expectations or zero understanding of how to navigate, you're going to have a bad time.
Maybe not a bad time, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are more flexible than I am personally. Not necessarily a bad time, just not as good a time as they could have.
Right.
With a little bit of planning.
Right. But without any expectation at all, I think you wait for the fun to find you instead of going out and finding your fun. And then you're going to be like, why did I pay this much?
True. Yes.
And so that's what I mean when I say that. But I think you have those folks that are planners to be like, okay, we have to be here at this time, and we have to be here at this time, and we have to be here at this time. And then you had the way we did this trip of, here's our must-dos, here's the rides we have to get on, and here's the 6 reservations we need to hit. Everything else is fine. Now, that also led to us maybe doing some more steps than we usually would, because we weren't able to sort of do everything in a spot at a time like we maybe normally would have. But we also knew that we were coming back to Epcot 2 more times. We also knew, so we were spending a little bit more time and like taking advantage of things when we could.
And with that said, I don't feel like we did a lot of chasing back and forth.
Our last Epcot day we
aside
did.
from Epcot.
Yeah.
Like that was,
But I still
but it was such a good day.
It was, and I keep thinking to myself, Epcot's not as big as I remember it being. Like, we did a lot of steps.
We did.
But everywhere we went, like when we were crossing across the park to get somewhere, it always seemed closer than what I thought it was going to be.
Well, and I think some of the reimagining that they've done.
It's a good word.
Thank you. And like the addition of the Moana exhibit, I think that kind of freed up some of that empty space that was there for so long, that it seemed smaller because there was more to look at and more like you come upon something more often.
Yeah, that very well could be.
Rather
okay.
than just a great big long empty
Right.
sidewalk.
Right. Yeah, that's very true. So let's get back to group planning.
Okay.
So, well, group experience. So what are some of the other things that we had to think about ahead of our February trip? So we got the group together not only to pick a date range, but then as we got closer, we got the group back together again to compare must-do lists. Mm-hmm. What are some of the other things that, with a group of friends, like people that know one another fairly well, what were some of the complexities that you had as a planner?
Well, I know that a lot of, like, we didn't do all our meals together. And I think that's one big thing when trying to plan a group trip to Disney, be that World, Land, Paris, wherever you're going, is that you don't always have to stay in a group.
Right.
You can split off into smaller groups or even solo and do what you want to do. And if you happen to get back together for a meal or even just a cocktail at the end of the day, super. If not, you'll catch up eventually.
Yep. Yeah, and I think the other thing that I think we did well with that trip is we had 3 meals that it was requested that we all get together for.
Yes.
So we had the night we arrived, which was the
Progressive dinner
night, and all of us that were there went and did that. Mm-hmm. Then we had 50s prime time. Mm-hmm. And then on our last night, we had the
Santa and Hell Inn.
Mm-hmm. And those were the things where we said, these are reservations that we have that we're going to do together.
Oh, and Oga's Cantina.
Yeah, Oga's Cantina. Yeah, that's right, over in Galaxy's Edge. So these are the things that we're doing together. You have to be here at this time.
Right.
Other than that, if you want to go off and get your own reservation, if you want to go off and go to a completely different park, you want to go visit 4 parks in one day, if we're doing this dinner on your 4 parks one day, just make sure you're here at this time.
Correct.
Because that was the request of the birthday person. That we're going as a group. Let's spend a little bit of time together as a group and debrief. So I highly recommend that, of picking those times in the course of your week, of your trip, or however long it is, from 1 day to 15 days. Pick those times where, as your big group, you want to celebrate together, because you are there together.
Right. Oh, and we did the monorail bar crawl
Yeah.
together as well.
Yeah.
But to that point, like, we had a reservation at Tiffin's, and we took a couple of the people that had not been to Disney World ever before. We took them with us. And so, I mean, if you do plan your reservations out that far in advance, which is 60 days before you travel, if you're staying on property, you can actually plan for the entire length of your trip at day 59.
Right. And the other thing, go ahead. Sorry.
But we were able to modify a couple of reservations to include some of the people that didn't really have any plans. We're like, do you want to join us? Because like, we wanted to spend time with those people as well. Not necessarily in the entire group setting.
Right.
But just to expose them to more Disney, I guess.
Yeah, 100%. And that was going to be my other kind of planning tip for folks, is when you're traveling with a big group, in those ones that you do want to do together, book early. There were multiple places where we were like, okay, we have a group of 4, a group of 4, and a group of 1, and the reservations are all within like 20 minutes of one another. But then we had to go and be like, hey, we're these 3 groups, can we combine? Versus just getting a group of a reservation for 9, which makes it more stressful for the planner. You don't know if you're going to be able to sit together as a group like you want to. It makes it more stressful for the people at the host stand at those sit-down restaurants, that they have to then, can we do this or can we not? Do we have the table space? Because sometimes it's not as easy as just pulling tables together that are close. So we got lucky in the ones that we did have to do that with, that we were always able to combine. But in those instances, it never hurts to ask, but always be nice.
100%.
If they say no,
it's no.
It's not their fault you couldn't get a group reservation together.
Right. And it could be that, I mean, I would also say be very flexible when you're planning with a group, because it may be that you have to take an option B.
Right.
For a reservation, or
Yep.
make some other plans or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm not usually a huge fan of this, so let me say this with a caveat, that book your plan B as well.
Yes.
Like, you don't necessarily have to keep every reservation that you take. Like, Disney's official rules is you have to cancel within 24 hours, right?
It's actually 2 hours. I'll have to check on that.
So yeah,
for sure. But
it's super flexible.
Yes, you can make modifications and changes.
Right.
You're not locked and loaded, except for some of the pricier character dining experience, like Cinderella's Royal Table, because they charge you for that with your credit card, the entire amount for the number of people that you reserve at the time you reserve.
Interesting. So if you cancel, do you get any of your money back?
You do, as long as you're within that window.
Okay.
But still, like, don't be surprised when you see that on your
Right.
credit card statement that they've already got your money.
Yeah. So where I was going with that is book your plan B and keep trying for a bit to get your plan A. Don't give up on your plan A just because you had to book your plan B. Now, with that said, release that plan B reservation as soon as you can.
Yes.
The reason I suggest that is, number one, I like to consider myself a good human. If you release that reservation, it lets somebody else grab that reservation that maybe that's their plan A. Versus you hold on to that reservation until an hour or two or whatever the cutoff is prior to your reservation and then release it. All of a sudden, that person that really had their hopes set on going to that restaurant as a plan A can't get in, and they don't get to do that. So be a good Disney fan and release that as soon as you can. There's going to be times when you have to hold it till a couple hours before because you're modifying and you get that last minute thing that you really want to do. But release it as soon as you can. That's my PSA.
Right. And that brings us back to a very good point for all of this. With reservations and individual lightning lanes and things like that, make sure that your My Disney experience apps are linked together.
Right.
So that whoever is making the reservation or making the individual lightning lane or anything like that has full access to be able to add you to whatever they're booking.
So you can see
So
number
you
one.
can see on your app, and you're present. You're
Right.
present and accounted for.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good. We're going off on all sorts of.
Hey, there's a lot to think about with
there
this.
really is. So going back to kind of the group, that was a long way back around to sort of group setting. Let's talk a little bit about transportation too. Mm-hmm. Like, what is your advice? Like, I know what we did. We went through a private company to get a big vehicle that all of us, because luckily we all got on the same flight, so we got to Orlando at the exact same time. What are your recommendations for larger groups getting to the resorts?
It really, at that point, becomes a budgetary thing. Like, if you all want to travel together, I think that's fine.
Right.
But I would definitely... And two, it depends on the type of group that it is. We were all a group of adults. I think it would have been entirely different had we had children with us.
Right.
But the group has to have a conversation of, what do we want this to look like? Do we want to be our group and our group alone? Or do we want to deal with a charter bus and children and all these other people that are headed to the exact same place that we are, but you just start that herd mentality at that point?
Yep.
So I don't, again, my privilege is showing, and I understand that. I don't see any problem at all with hiring a private vehicle to, from, or indifferent.
No. Once they got rid of Magical Express, the private vehicle became much more appealing to me.
Yes.
Because with Magical Express, you could put a tag on your luggage at home, get on a bus, and be at the resort, and your luggage would meet you at the resort at some point that day. Mm-hmm. You don't get that perk, that benefit anymore. So I am one that, like, I don't necessarily want to get on a bus to go ride from the airport and stop at 87 resorts before they get to mine. I know they don't do the buses that way, but the idea is the same. Whereas I can either get a car if we're going just the two of us, like a private car or a minivan or an Uber or something like that, where we don't have to worry about anybody else and what they're doing. It's all about us at that moment. And the same thing holds true with a group. Again, cost is a factor. We could have split up to 2 Ubers and probably done it a little less expensive, but it was fun for us to travel in style and that kind of thing. So,
and our driver did help us with luggage. I mean, that's the thing that you have to keep in mind, is that now that there is no Magical Express anymore, which Disney, please bring that back, you still have to wait at baggage claim.
Right.
And our driver was wonderful enough to meet us there and help us with the bags and then show us to the vehicle and all these other things. So it really depends on the experience that you want. Of course, there's Ubers and Lyfts and things like that. You can hire a minivan. Any number of things that you want to do, you can. It just depends on your budget. And if you want to travel with a group of people, you need to have those numbers in mind before you order 75 Lyfts.
Yep. So how do you do park tickets with a group? Is it any different than booking for just 1 or 2 people versus getting park tickets for a group?
Not really. You just have to determine the days that you want to go. Not that park reservations are a thing at Disney World anymore. They are still at Disneyland. But you have to identify how many days you want in the parks, when your off days are going to be. And if it's a group situation, you kind of have to have that conversation of, this is what we kind of have in mind, and this is why. And if you can convince people to do it, like on a rest day or whatever, fine.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the other thing with a group is, like, that just popped something into my head, is you don't necessarily, if you're with a group of people that doesn't want to do a rest day in the middle, they don't have to.
No.
The thing that you have to be careful with, though, is that you don't end up being jealous of their experience if you decide you do want to take a rest day.
Correct.
So if they go do something really cool in parks with their park ticket on a day that you have set aside for rest, you just have to live fully into you made the right decision for you.
Right. And that's where it becomes so important to listen to yourself and your stamina,
Right.
I guess you want to say. But yeah, and there's always the next trip.
It's the wonderful thing about Disney. There's always next time.
Mm-hmm.
Always next time. You're going to find some reason to go back. You can never do it all.
Never
There
ever.
are too many things for you to be able to do it all.
And it's changing so frequently that I honestly don't think that you could, even if you do the 4 parks in one day, I don't think you could actually. I admire people that do things like that, but the logical side of me says that that's not worth it for me.
Right.
Because that's far too much time on a mode of transportation when I could just be enjoying things in a park.
Right.
Even if it's just standing in a park.
Right. Yeah. Do you need to compete with yourself? Do you need to compete with others that have done that kind of thing?
But hey, if that's your jam, that's your jam. You go do
it. Again, that's one of the things I love about Disney vacations. It's a controlled environment, but you get to do what's right for you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the biggest, if you don't take anything else away from this episode, even in group trips, make sure you do you.
Yes.
Like, we've seen so many people around parks in big groups that just look miserable because they're trying to herd a group of people all to the next ride, all to the next thing, where they're just trying to get a group of 10 or 15 people. It's like herding cats.
It really is.
Like, some people are like, I'm hungry. Some people are like, I gotta pee. Some people are, I want to go wait in that line, but I'm not going to wait in lines.
throw up.
Right. So just make sure you're doing things the way that works for you, mm-hmm. and not feeling like you have to, just because it's your trip with grandma doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend 24/7 with grandma at Disney.
Right.
Grandma probably wants to go find a park bench and 15-year-old is like, I'm going to go on Expedition Everest 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
Grandma's not going to want to do that.
Right. And two, that made something pop into my head when you said that. Make sure that you are doing the research that you need to do on the attractions so that you know what you're going to be comfortable with and what you are not going to be comfortable with. And
yes.
Don't, like, I would say if it's not like a physical or a medical issue that's preventing you from doing something, I would try it. Because the worst is I'm never going on that again.
Right.
The best is that's my favorite attraction ever, and it's a must-do for me now.
Yeah, Expedition Everest for Candice.
Yes. At the same time, if you are a person that gets motion sick, you need to understand that Guardians of the Galaxy launches backwards, and you spin pretty much the entire time. You need to understand that some of the rides, attractions where you wear 3D glasses, that might throw you off a little bit.
Yep.
So it's very important that you do your research, in my opinion, so that you have the best possible time.
Yeah.
And by all means, and I can't say this enough, if you have back issues or medical issues or are pregnant or whatever, follow the signs.
Yes.
It's not worth messing yourself up.
Right. Those signs aren't there just because Disney wanted to spend money on signs.
Right. Right. A lot can happen.
Right.
And yes, it's a controlled environment, but it's not that controlled.
Right.
Like, stuff still happens.
Right.
Yeah.
It's still the world.
Right.
Just because it's Disney World doesn't mean it's not the world.
There's no dome over the top of it.
Balderdash. Okay, so anything else that we think of from our February trip that was like specific to a group?
I would highly recommend using WhatsApp for communication.
Oh, yeah. That way you, even if we did a lot of that of, hey, in the group chat, here's where we're at if you want to come join us. Mm-hmm. Or where are you at? We want to come find you because we know you were going to be near here. Are you still there?
Correct.
And you move fast enough at Disney that there can be times when you send a message that says, I'm here, and 10 minutes later you're in a completely different location, and that's perfectly okay. But just that WhatsApp or some sort of communication device allows you to stay connected to being able to do things with folks. The the My Disney Experience app does not have communication internal to it.
No, it does not. And I think that would be far too slow if it did, because everybody's trying to use that service for Genie and all the things and reservations and everything. So I think the fact that it doesn't have a communication feature to it is a bonus.
Right.
The one for the cruise ship does.
And it's slow and it's hard to use and all of those things.
Yes. But
so, yeah, that's what else from that trip group related. I think we've kind of covered all of it.
Yeah, other than I would just add the point that the group of people that you're going with, just keep the lines of communication open. Like, be open and honest with the people that you're traveling with. So if you're not having a great time or you're feeling a certain kind of way, let people know.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a couple times when Candice and I just went and parked somewhere. And others came and found us.
Or there was the night where we were in Animal Kingdom, the day we were in Animal Kingdom, and I'm like, you know what? I am done for today. Y'all go do what you want. I'll be back at the hotel. And it was fine.
Yeah.
But I knew that I had hit my limit that day.
Right. And that's one more thing before we move to the next phase of this discussion is resorts. I would recommend staying in the same resort if your budget allows.
You mean with the whole group?
With the whole group.
Yes.
One of the things, we had one person that was staying elsewhere, and I think there were times when they maybe felt like they got split apart a little bit more because they had to hop on the Skyliner to go to their resort when we were just walking to ours. But again, I don't think it took away from their trip, but it made it a little bit harder for some of those group things maybe. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
But I wouldn't begrudge them saving the $2,000 or $3,000 that they saved that we spent if that's what's better for their budget.
Oh, 100% not.
So you can make anything work.
Right.
But just I like the idea of everybody being in one resort.
If possible.
If possible. And I'm going to use that as a segue into our next kind of conversation about the next one that we're planning, because the idea there is we probably will not all be in the same resort, and that's by design. So I am a part of a group at work which just offhandedly started talking about a potential trip to Disneyland in the fall. And there's 15 of us
like
that are
yes.
potentially interested. We're not 100% sure that we're going to book it yet or anything like that. And the nuance here and why I wanted to talk about it in group trip is we are, for all intents and purposes, strangers. We work for the same company, spread out all over the country. Some folks know one another because they're local to each other. Others have met once in a training class. Others just plain don't know each other, but just somebody found out they were a Disney fan and included them in this group that we started.
And others of us are just tag-alongs because we happen to be related.
Right, exactly. So this is a group of 10 to 15 people that the only thing they really have in common is their places of employment and their love of Disney. So as you think about planning that, what are the nuances and the things that group has to think about that maybe a group of people that are closer don't have to think about?
I think the big thing there is it's going to be a little bit more budget focused than a close-knit group of people, just because there's not that whole, I want to stay in the same resort as you necessarily. Also, like if we want to have group activities or whatever, group meals or whatever, that's going to be a little bit harder to wrap everybody up into.
Right.
And also, there could be 15 different kinds of expectations going into it because they've had different experiences with Disney in the past. They're looking forward to different experiences in the future.
They're all big fans, so they have the things.
So they know it. They've got it locked and loaded. And I don't know. It'll be an interesting experience if it actually ends up happening.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that I think we'll have to think through is just that, like, do we just say in this 4-day span where we're all going to be in Disneyland, we're just going to assign one dinner where we're the company group that gets together for dinner Or do you try and do a couple of different reservations or times? Maybe it's not even a reservation thing. It's hey, at 7:00 we're going to go to this quick service place, and this is where we're going to eat for those that want to join. Or I think that's the kind of thing we're going to have to think about that we're not yet, because all we're thinking about is resort, time frame, and park tickets at this point. Mm-hmm. I think when we get down into the planning, if we get people to say, yes, we're going to book, I think that's where we start talking about, okay, what do we want to do together and what do we not want to do together? Mm-hmm. Because part of this is making connections with your coworkers too. I work in an environment where we are 100% remote. Well, the company's 95% remote. The people that are all going to be on this trip are remote workers. So this is one of those things where we get to maybe build some connections as well with some coworkers that make us a better work community too. And I think that's one of those things we're really going to have to think about, how we manage those expectations when ultimately everybody's probably looking at this as my Disneyland trip. And if I hook up with work people, I happen to hook up with work people.
But it's not a priority.
Right.
Like it would be with a close friend group.
Right. So I think that throws some additional complexity into the planning too.
It does.
Now, this isn't a travel tips with Candice episode, but as a travel agent, travel professional,
thank you,
travel
designer,
travel superhero, whatever you want to call yourself.
Travel pixie.
There you go. What are you worried about trying to plan for a group like this?
The only thing that I've really had to go on at this point is a spreadsheet of data.
Right.
I have no idea what any of these people are like because I haven't been able to send them my intake form that I normally do. So I don't know. I mean, I know the people in their party. I know the ages of the people in their party, but that's it. I don't know, like, if they're asking for recommendations, I'm going to have, like, conversations.
Right. About,
well, tell me what you normally do. And some of those other things where with a close friend group, even if I'm not familiar with that group when we start the process, it's handled a little bit differently.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. But other than that, I think the group trip is pretty much the same, right? You have to pick those times where you want to get together. Mm-hmm. You don't try and work as a crowd. Mm-hmm. You do what you want to do when you want to do it, and just stay. Okay, so here's the point that I'll make. If you are traveling as part of a group, you have to understand that you're traveling as part of a group. Mm-hmm. You have to stay cognizant and aware of what the people in your group are also doing. That speaks to the communication of maybe it's a good morning message in the morning that says, here's our plan. Or it's a middle of the day check-in to say, hey, where's everybody at? What's the greatest thing you did this morning so far? Just be a good travel partner in groups like that. Whether it be with a family affair, a friend group, or a work group, just be a good travel partner, right? Mm-hmm. Let people know what you're doing. Let people know where you're at, because maybe they do want to tag along. Maybe they do want to take that moment to build that relationship with you.
Or maybe somebody's got plans to go rope drop and somebody's not feeling it.
Right.
So if they know that somebody else in the group is not going to go rope drop and they have time to go get coffee or whatever the case may be, they're absolutely going to take you up on that.
Yeah.
And you can form a bond over that, really.
Yeah, exactly. You build that's where some of your memories come from. Mm-hmm. Like when we went into Animal Kingdom late, mm-hmm. The group that wanted to do Expedition Everest never would have done Expedition Everest 5 times in a row if those of us that didn't necessarily want to rope drop and do as much as they could in the morning went with them. It would have been more of a push and pull about where to go, when to go. We can only do this once because we have to move on to the next thing.
Right.
Versus, let's go again. Let's go again.
Yeah.
Let's go again. So just being aware of what your group is doing and being inclusive of your group is super important. And I think one of those things that cannot be underrated as part of a group trip.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%.
Okay, that feels like a good place to stop. Anything else you want to add?
I will just add this, and we've said a lot during this episode. We've said a lot. There's a lot of intricacies to a group trip, but I will tell you that it is 100% possible.
And worth it.
And worth
Go
it.
with a group. It's fun.
It is fun. It is a lot of fun. But, like, don't be scared. But that's another reason, and this comes no surprise, but I would recommend working with somebody who knows. Like, it's scary if you try and do it by yourself.
Yeah.
So have somebody in your back pocket that can give you a little nudge and say, this is what we need to do. This is how we need to do this. These are my recommendations. Don't have to listen to me if you don't want to.
Right. And to help navigate Disney before Disney.
Ooh,
There's a lot to navigate.
There
like
is.
when you're trying to figure stuff out. So,
Yep.
Working with somebody, I always highly recommend Miss Candice sitting across from me because I always say this and it embarrasses her, but she's damn good at what she does. But again, this isn't an advertisement episode, but you are welcome to contact her.
Yes.
She will be happy to help you because she loves doing what she does and she's really good at it. So,
Yep.
okay. Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay. Go out. Let us know what if you've done a group trip. Come to our Facebook or our Instagram or our Reddit or our YouTube and let us know what you did that made your group trip special or lessons that you learned from your group trip. We'd love to hear from you. And just remember, go out and be a good human, and there is always a great, big, beautiful tomorrow.
And we'll see you real soon.